Stand up.
All right, here I am. Sorry, I am late. Finally got it together today. It is Tuesday. It is the 24th of June. There is, quote, peace in the Middle East. And also the Supreme Court has told our tiny king authoritarian he could be even more of a totalitarian because now he actually gets to send any convicted criminals to third countries to which they have no previous connection. That's right. The Supreme Court yesterday made it easier for Trump to deport them. And of course, today is June 24th. It is the New York City mayoral primary that you have probably been hearing a lot about, no matter where you are or what your algorithm is. If you pay attention to news and politics, apparently it's worked its way in there because my buddy in Australia was asking me about it. So today it's Cuomo versus Mamdani. Some other candidate could potentially win, but probably highly unlikely. And so my money is actually still on Cuomo because I think people are stupid. But hey, I don't know. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong. It's very hot outside in New York and the surrounding, well, much of the country, I should say, is baking. But here I am, happy to be here with you. I've got your headlines and your clip show. Thank you to everybody who was at last night's hangout. We had a great showing in our hangout last night. We talked for over 2 hours. We covered all kinds of important subjects and topics. We had some great laughs in between. It was a really great conversation. We also got to hear from our friend Carlo in Canada, who has just got a stent put in one of his arteries, I guess, to his heart. He had a 90% blockage, and we love Carlo, so we were worried about Carlo. But I guess what we weren't expecting last night is to get his description of the healthcare system in Canada through this one malady that he was suffering from. And it was really, really interesting to hear how he navigated the healthcare system and what he had to do, and what highly recommend you go listen to the hangout from last night just for that. I might share that with the public if it's okay with Carlo, because it was the healthcare system there so much easier to navigate. And then he showed us his receipt, which was like a parking pass at the hospital for $12 or something like that. So wild. And great to hear that Carlo's doing all right and to hear about their system and the way that he navigated it. If you're a paid subscriber, you get an email every day, unless I guess you turn it off. And in that email, lately I've been writing a nonsensical, fun, thoughtful, hopefully message. So thanks to everybody who is reading it, but there'll be a link to last night's hangout. If you want to watch it, you can hear from Carlo directly there. Thank you to everybody who's a paid subscriber to the show. Thanks, big thanks to Max Langlois. I always say his name wrong, but very, very much appreciated. A raise, a bump in the monthly membership that Max is paying. He's been a long time listener and supporter, and I am so grateful to you, Max, and everybody who has been with me for such a long time. And new subscribers, welcome to the community and along the journey with us. And speaking of that journey, let's do it. Okay, I've got two great guests joining me today. It is Wajahat Ali and Bill B in D.C. I talked to them both yesterday afternoon. Great conversations with both of them, almost exclusively entirely about what is going on in the Middle East. I love their perspectives. I love, by the way, their different styles. Bill, of course, is very nuanced and granular and contextual with history and so on. And Waj is more ranting, and I love it. I love what he's got to say. I love what Bill's got to say. I've got questions for both of them. And the interviews begin at about 30 minutes into today's show. But first, I've got those headlines for you. So let's get to them and through them. Yesterday, the Supreme Court made it easier for the Mad King and future administrations, I guess, to deport convicted criminals to third countries to which they have no previous connection? How can that be? How is that? It's shocking and shameful. Does any other country do that? The court, in a brief, unsigned order, put a hold on a federal judge's ruling that said those affected nationwide should have a meaningful opportunity to bring claims they would be at risk of torture, persecution, or death if sent to countries with the administration has made deals with to receive deported immigrants. I mean, it gets deeper. I mean, I have all kinds of concerns about the deals that are being made with those other countries and the private prisons that we may be paying them to build and the people who might be profiting from those private prisons, the contractors and developers and owners. It's just real concerning and devastating news to hear. And it might not hold. I have some confusion about that. We're going to talk with Eric Siegel about it very soon. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the UK just hours after a major Russian drone and missile attack in Kiev killed at least 9 people and injured over 30. The attack was the latest in a series of deadly and intensifying Russian strikes on Ukraine, but concerns are growing in Kiev that such assaults are drawing less attention and condemnation from Western allies as their focus shifts to the Middle East and the U.S. entry into the Israel-Iran war. Does Ukraine lose as a result of all of the focus and resources being paid to the Middle East? And will things change now that cooler heads have prevailed? Have cooler heads prevailed? Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested during an economic forum that the whole of Ukraine belongs to his country, even though, of course, Russia only controls about a fifth of Ukrainian territory. So there's a related note for you. Back here at home, a federal judge this past Sunday rejected the Justice Department's bid to detain Kilmar Abrego Garcia pending as federal criminal in Tennessee, citing the importance of due process while noting that he could still separately be held by immigration authorities. So keeping a close watch on his case. And China sent 74 warplanes toward Taiwan between late Thursday and early Friday. I hadn't heard about this. 61 of the planes crossed the central line in the Taiwan Strait that unofficially divides the sides, an unusually large number as tensions remain heightened in the region. It wasn't clear why so many planes were scrambled between late Thursday and early Friday, as tabulated by Taiwan's defense ministry. The planes were sent in 2 separate tranches, it added. So that's a disconcerting concern. What are they doing? What's going on over there? A startling headline from last week. This one's going to shock and upset you. Alaska just hit a climate milestone. Its first ever heat advisory in Alaska. That is not good. Over at grist.org, writing about this, they say it's the kind of bureaucratic alert that rarely makes national headlines, but in a city where permafrost thaw buckles roads, homes lack air conditioning, and the high at this time of year is generally in the 70s, the warning comes as a sign of rapidly shifting climate. Alaska is warming more than twice as fast as the global average. That is very, very bad. And I read an op-ed yesterday about how scientists and experts got a part of climate change wrong at the beginning, not being as worried about methane as they need to be. And that is something that we could fix, actually, because he's talking about methane leaks in oil and gas drilling and transportation. And it's something that we could fix if the government would pay the companies to fix it, which is not a great, perfect fix, but a potential one. Anyway, really interesting to read that op-ed yesterday from Carl Pope, who has been part of the movement for a very long time, the former executive director of the Sierra Club. So that was disconcerting news about Alaska's climate. Let's see. The Voice of America, the Trump administration sent layoff notices on Friday to more than 600 employees of VOA, a federally funded news program that provides independent reporting to countries with limited press freedom. They just had to bring back a whole bunch of Farsi-speaking ones over this whole Iran situation. In a hearing Monday, in this related story to yesterday, to determine the future of Voice of America, U.S. District Judge Royce Lambert scolded the government for not complying with its preliminary injunction from April. In Gaza, World's Central Kitchen, the charity founded by the celebrity chef Jose Andres, resumed its work after a nearly 7-week pause, so that's good news. In France, officials said that 145 people reported that they'd been stabbed with needles at a nationwide music festival on Saturday. That is a crazy story. Hold on, let me see this. French officials did not provide any details about the people who were arrested or about what substances the syringes may have contained. So, I don't know. I think this is like one of those like rape drugs or something that they do, because there's been an issue with that in Europe, and I don't want that to come here. I don't like that. I don't know anything about it, but I wanted to mention it here. The U.S. measles outbreak this year, apparently one of the largest in a generation, And so that's a terrible headline. A new generation of weight loss drugs is expected to reach patients as soon as next year. I got some audio from a New York Times reporter on that. Tesla began limited self-driving taxi service in Austin, Texas. And those are the headlines outside of what is happening in the Middle East right now that I've got for you. Let's get to the clips. We're going to cover plenty of what's going on between Israel and Iran. But just to mention this real quick, the latest here on Tuesday morning is that Israel and Iran are entering a shaky ceasefire with immediate claims of violations. So that is where we are at just past, almost 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, on the latest on whatever is going to be of the quote, peace deal. All right, now let's get to the clips that I've got for you. Those are the headlines. Now on to the clip show. Let's start with Congressman Greg Caesar, who was at I think this is a town hall or one of those anti-oligarchy rallies. Here he is. He is a congressman from Texas, and this is a good 2-minute speech. I like it. I like this guy. He's smart. He's passionate. So I thought I would share this with you.
My entire adult life, politicians have promised quick and easy battles in the Middle East. And then year after year after year after year after year after year, they send working class kids out to fight and die in their endless wars in the Middle East. No more. Enough. Enough. All of us know too many people that have come back home with life-changing and devastating injuries. All of us here know too many people who have come back with PTSD, and too many of us know soldiers who never came back. Every person here that's from my generation has a friend or a classmate from high school or from college that never came back. Enough. Enough. I'm proud to represent San Antonio in Congress, Military City, USA. Where we honor the service of our men and women in uniform, and we honor their service by never sending them into harm's way unless we have no other option. We do not send Americans into harm's way because a foreign prime minister has a political problem. We do not send Americans into harm's way because a president wants to look tough. No new wars. No new wars. Donald Trump promised us peace and stability. He has no right to plunge us into another forever war. Donald Trump put a Fox News host in charge of the Pentagon. He has no right to send Americans into harm's way on an impulse. Donald Trump has fired thousands of people who care for our wounded veterans. He has no right to risk more men and women that he will not take care of when or if they come back home.
There you go. Greg Caesar, Congressman Greg Caesar. He is a rising star in the Democratic Party. And now let's go to a conversation between Iranian-American Reza Aslan, who I know and have a lot of respect for, in conversation with Mehdi Hassan a couple of days ago. I thought this was good. This is out in California. They taped this for, I think, Mehdi's network, the Zeteo network, and I wanted to share it.
You watched, I think a lot of people here from that reaction saw some of that Tucker Carlson interview. A friend of mine texted me and said, are we allowed to like Tucker Carlson for 48 hours?
Yeah, 48 hours,
I said, yeah, it's like the purge, right? You can like the white supremacist just for a little bit while he's the only person doing journalism in this moment and asking some tough questions. Yeah. You are someone who is an Iranian American who has studied this stuff. You are like me. We've got the grays to show, old enough to remember the Iraq War.
Yeah.
This stuff is integral. America goes to war constantly with countries that most voters couldn't find on the map, and most politicians would struggle to say anything about, whether it's Iraq, Libya, Syria, now Iran.
No, it's the only time that Americans learn geography is when we start bombing. That's when we figure out where things are. Look, I think you brought up the Iraq thing, and it is very important. And the truth is, Tucker Carlson has a point here, that we went into the Iraq War.
We're only allowed to say that a few times tonight. Then we have to take a shower. Tucker Carlson has a point.
We went into the Iraq War not just under false pretenses, but with absolute ignorance about Iraq, its culture, its politics, its people. And it's very clear that we're falling into the same trap again. And I do think that it is important to note that in the same way that we went to the Iraq war based on a series of lies, there is a series of lies that are being told about the need to go to war with Iran that are just as urgent. Lie number one is this notion that while it is true that Iran has for years been developing a nuclear program, a uranium enrichment program, that somehow they are on the verge at any minute now to creating a bomb. And the entire world's intelligence community disagrees with this point. So that's
including
lie
U.S.
number
intelligence,
one.
including the CNN.
U.S., that's lie number one. Lie number two is one that we hear all the time, too, which is that Iran poses an existential threat to Israel. The absurdity of this statement. I mean, if there's anything that we've learned in the last couple of days of this bombing campaign is that Iran is a gnat on the back of Israel. I mean, Israel is a incredibly powerful military. Iran is not. Yeah. Iran doesn't pose a conventional threat. And then line number three, and this I think is the most pernicious one, particularly here in Los Angeles, or Tehrangeles, as we like to call it sometimes, which is that while it is absolutely true, it's 100% fact that the Iranian people loathe their government, that the government, this regime, is barely holding on, that is true. The idea that all we need is some U.S. bombs to start dropping on Tehran for the regime to ultimately collapse and the people to rise up and take over is absurd. If anything, the opposite is going to occur. Iranians are very patriotic. They're very nationalistic.
Pretty sure they had an 8-year war in which they lost 250,000 people being attacked by Iraq and didn't just roll over.
Honestly, I think the best thing that could happen to this regime is if American bombs start to fall on it.
All right. Well, there is one argument. You're going to hear that a lot, I think, and a very disconcerting one, to say the least. Here's Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, yesterday.
And what I can say is not a scintilla of evidence to date has been presented that I have seen to justify the notion that there was an imminent threat to the United States of America. If the administration has evidence to the contrary, come up to present it. We're not hard to find. I'm not hiding. And we've asked for a Gang of Eight briefing. Tomorrow, there will be an opportunity for every single member of the House to hear the information from the administration, and hopefully they will present it in a manner that's comprehensive. It will be probed, it will be tested, it will be aggressively pushed back again.
All right, just a little bit of his comments yesterday. Here is the NATO Secretary, Mark Rutte. I thought this was a brief but interesting clip.
Let's focus on the essentials here. My biggest fear would be for Iran to own and be able to use and deploy a nuclear weapon. It would be a stranglehold on Israel, on the whole region and other parts of the world. And that is why NATO has said Iran should not. And this is a consistent position of NATO. Iran should not have its hands on a nuclear weapon. So, and I would not agree that this is against international law what the US did.
Okay, well, so it's not against international law, apparently. Is it against United States law? And why is the NATO secretary going out and supporting this? Some question about where the Europeans are on this and whether they've been muted or vocal. Either way, the theory that Bill Boyle has is that they don't want to have a problem with the Americans over Iran and Israel because they need the American support against the main threat to them, Russia. That's an interesting theory, but I've heard too many full-throated support. I feel like the Germans are supporting this bombing raid in Iran, and I just... who knows? But it will all shake out soon. We'll figure it out together, I suppose. All right, here is a 2-minute clip from the New York Times. Got this annoying music behind it. But this is reporter Danny Bloom talking about what these new weight loss pills might mean in terms of their comparison with all the injections that people have become so familiar with and that have been very, very successful to help people lose weight. Here is that dispatch.
A drug that is just as effective as Ozempic for weight loss might soon be coming in the form of a pill as early as next year. Over the last few years, drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound have revolutionized the way that we talk about and treat obesity. And scientists have worked really hard to develop a new crop of drugs that they hope will become more accessible, more affordable, more convenient, and maybe even have fewer side effects. So the current medications that we have belong under this umbrella classification of GLP-1s, and these are drugs that were originally developed to treat diabetes and imitate this hormone that naturally occurs, and so they regulate blood sugar, they help us feel fuller for longer periods of time. They're really effective at curbing appetite. These drugs have also, though, been extremely expensive as demand has vastly outpaced supply over the last few years. And again, some people have really just been afraid of needles and not wanting to take these medications that you have to inject yourself with. Pretty much anytime you lose a significant amount of weight, you are also going to lose some muscle mass, and that has come up as a concern with these medications, particularly for older adults. So what's next? What is different about this new round of drugs? The scientists that I spoke with are perhaps most excited about this new oral medication that is called orforglipron. It is a pill that you take once a day, and it is shown to be about as effective as Ozempic has been in clinical trials at this stage. And so after 40 weeks, patients with type 2 diabetes lost substantial amounts of weight. A pill would be easier to make than a shot, and so it might be cheaper to make orforglipron at scale, and that could mean that consumers have a lower price tag. In addition, we have this drug called Maritide that's pretty hotly anticipated right now. It would only need to be injected once a month or potentially even less frequently. There are also these drugs that are targeting this hormone called amylin, and the thinking is that maybe that could help preserve muscle mass. So right now it can feel like the entire pharmaceutical industry is locked in this arms race to outcompete each other and try to get the most effective drug to the market as quickly as possible. And the hope is that the more of these drugs we get, the better doctors will be able to tailor them individually to patients and to their needs.
There you go. I thought that was interesting and wanted to share it. And finally, I've got two more great clips for you. First, it's another car rant from the brilliant and hilarious comedian Trey Crowder. And then, thanks to Will Powers, I grabbed a little bit of Diego Luna's monologue from Jimmy Kimmel's show. He's hosting Kimmel this week, and it is real good, Will. Thanks for that. First, here's Trey Crowder.
Hey, y'all, you know how during the first half of the first year of Trump's second term, anytime a new historically terrible thing happened, you thought to yourself, well, at least we're not at war in the Middle East again. Yeah, well, guess what, hippies? Somebody used a Ouija board to get a new war anthem out of Toby Keith's Ghost, because it's freedom spreading time, baby. We just bombed Iran. That's right. I don't think any of us are super surprised. I mean, pants poop terrified maybe, but not surprised. We'd all been kind of hoping that maybe that whole funding a genocide over there thing would be enough of a methadone Band-Aid to keep our war addict of a government from fully relapsing, but alas, it just wasn't enough. I mean, after all, America's Army turned 250 this year, and what better gift is there for the old girl than World War III? Yeah, just in time for the 4th of July, too. You know, in a way, mushroom clouds are the biggest fireworks of all. Some would say that I'm overreacting. They'd be like, look, this is America. We do this. All right? Our presidents bomb brown countries. It's one of their favorite things to do. That, jerking off bankers, and spoiling Israel like a rich teenager after a divorce. And to that I say, okay, sure. But all those other times, there was at least some semblance of competent military leadership involved. Like right now, there's already been reports that Pete Hegseth, you know, the Secretary of Defense, is such a known screw-up. He might not even have been kept in the loop on this operation. Yeah, I heard they tried to keep him out, but old Hegsy busted up in the Situation Room double-fisting fireballs like, did somebody say getting bombed? Oh, you guys meant actual bombs? That's cool, too. I'm into that. That's fine. Let me just text the boys real quick. The prospect of World War III would be terrifying no matter who was in charge, but with this regime at the helm, it makes a man want to start digging in his yard and stockpiling canned meat, you know what I'm saying? But they say it ain't going to come to all that. They say we're not even at war with Iran. We're at war with their nuclear weapons program. The thing is, U.S. intelligence has repeatedly affirmed that they do not have a nuclear weapons program, to which Trump responded, well, intelligence is wrong, which could be the title of his memoir/coloring book. And now here we all are. They're really doing it. They're really doing the weapons of mass destruction approach. Yeah, well, to borrow the words from the man himself, fool me can't get fooled again. All right, we ain't buying that, okay? majority of Americans, people on both sides, have no interest in this war. And unlike 2003, there's not the still fresh wound of a national tragedy fueling irrational bloodlust. No. Now, Americans in 2025's irrational bloodlust is fueled by memes. Thank you very much. But either way, I just don't see the public support for this. I mean, even from chunks of MAGA, like, this is such a truly insane idea that Tucker Carlson and Bernie Sanders are in complete agreement on it. Like, nearly everyone in this country hates this and thinks that this is a terrible idea, which is how you know exactly what Trump's response will be. Double down and make things worse, which could be the subtitle of his memoir/coloring book. But either way, we all know public support doesn't matter anymore. The will of the people is irrelevant, and this de facto dictatorship of ours seems hell-bent on speed-running Armageddon for dummies. But other than that, how's everybody's summer going? Love y'all.
Oh, good stuff. Other than that, speed towards Armageddon. Other than that, okay, now I want to give you that Diego Luna. The whole monologue is worth watching. It's about 12 minutes opening, but he, of course, is in for Kimmel this week. Jimmy Kimmel, Diego Luna, the Mexican actor who has been in so many amazing shows, including most recently Andor, which is such a great series. I highly recommend it, whether or not you like sci-fi or Star Wars. Still, I think it's a great watch. Anyway, he was in doing the monologue, of course, broadcasting from Los Angeles. So I want to pick up where he's talking about how LA welcomed him when he first moved there and felt alone, and so many others. So he's celebrating Los Angeles, and then he goes into the rest of it. It's great, and I appreciate Will Powers for telling me to grab this.
From it, all because people from different cultures and realities agreed to give each other a chance and build something remarkable together. This place is a powerful example of what's possible, of what can be achieved when we put empathy first. Yes. I have never been able to fully understand how it is that someone like Donald Trump is able to acquire this level of power. I always struggle to understand how his hate speech can take root in a country whose nature has always been a welcoming one. Today, many people are feeling persecuted. Far too many people live in fear. Fear of taking their kids to school or going to places where they earn an honest living. These people, they're your neighbors, your friends, immigrants. This is very unfair, and let me tell you why. The multiple times that this country has had to rebuild itself, immigrants were always there to pick up the slack. Earlier this year, when LA burned, immigrant workers risked their lives to stop the flames. They are the ones who build this country. They feed it. They nurture and teach its children. They care for the elderly. They work in construction, hospitality. They run kitchens. They're technicians, merchants, athletes, drivers, farmers. They pay a lot of taxes, a lot of them, with their jobs. Papers or no papers. In 2022, undocumented immigrants contributed around $96.7 billion worth of taxes. But that is something that the Trump administration doesn't want you to know. There are a lot of lies flying around about immigrants, but I'm sure you have more than one story that can attest to the contrary. Talk about it. Share it. That helps. Today, they need to know that they're not alone. These have been a dark few weeks. It is not acceptable, nor it's normal, to separate families. Violence and terror are not okay. Immigrants need to know that their struggle is yours as well. Politicians have been dosing on this problem because it's easier than acknowledging it. Because this country benefits from the work of immigrants, but refuses to recognize their importance. That is what needs to change. It's about acknowledging the work of millions and how unfair it is that they have to live in hiding. The only solution is clear now, and it's been clear for decades. Give them a path to legal certainty. This is what your neighbors really deserve, to be fully welcome in this country where they already belong. To every citizen watching this, I encourage you to call your representatives. Tell them what you think. This is the number for Congress. It only takes a minute. And if you want to support those affected or who may need assistance, there are some great organizations that are doing exactly that, like Public Counsel and Kids in Need of Defense. I urge you to learn more about these organizations. Thank you for listening.
There you have it. Good stuff. Go watch the whole thing and watch him all week on ABC while he's in for Kimmel. Okay, those are all the clips I've got for you, the headlines, and I've got two great guests joining me today. I cannot do it without your paid subscription. Again, you can always pay more if you want. Several of you have done that. It makes a huge difference when you up it from 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 or 20, whatever you want to pay, whatever you're getting out of it. That makes a huge difference to me and the hours of work I'm doing here every day. Now, let's get to it. Bill B from DC is coming up, but first I checked in with Wajahat Ali, who everybody knows and loves. Everybody loves Waj, right? I mean, maybe you don't. Some people don't love Waj or disagree with what he's saying, but you gotta love Waj himself, no? Okay, his Substack is so good, The Left Hook. Get his book. Subscribe to him on Substack and all the social media platforms and support him there with a paid subscription if you can, because he's so generous to me and with us here. You can watch this on YouTube, youtube.com/standupwithpete. We were live yesterday. He was on vacation and yet he still agreed to join me. So I really appreciate and love Wajahat Ali. Let's take it away. Warbalat. There he is, on vacation, yet talking to me? I mean, get out of here. You're on vacation. Go take your kids. You're everywhere. You're talking to all the important people. You're saving the world. But what about the children?
The children are well fed. The children now are knocking on my door and saying, Baba, let's go. So we're going to go. But I said, first, Bald Man Pete has asked me to come. And they're like, oh, Bald Man Pete, he's scary. He's one of those scary whites. He can go radical real quick. So just listen to him and do what he says. So, you know, I'm supposed to be with my in-laws here in Orlando, and we're supposed to take the kids. I have like 800 kids here, my kids and the cousins. But Donald Trump decided, you know, based on vibes, Pete, not intelligence, because who needs intelligence, to join Israel's disastrous war with Iran. And of course, as I was talking to DAnielle Moodie earlier today for Democracy-ish, during our conversation, Iran retaliates. It seems to be a coordinated strike with Qatar, so we can only hope it's like some sort of sword rattling and, you know, Iran's doing a warning. But this is what happened, man. Wars in the Middle East are easy to start, hard to finish, and we have the dumbest people on earth who, according to the New York Times reporting, went off of vibes, and specifically the New York Times reported that Donald Trump saw Fox and said, hey, the war is, quote, playing well, so let me strike. And then other people within that, most likely is probably, you know, Rubio and Hegseth and others, were like, damn it, we wish Tucker Carlson was on Fox so he could get another viewpoint. This is what we're dealing with. This is what happens when you elect the dumbest people on earth, man, based on vibes and based on ego and based on Fox News. That's why apparently, according to the New York Times, Donald Trump decided, after telegraphing to the world, by the way, so the whole strike was completely unsuccessful, because when you telegraph to the world that you're going to do a regime change, guess what? Iran just scooted away its enriched uranium. Like, oh, you might join us in 2 weeks. You might join Israel in bombing us in 2 weeks. Let's just move the uranium.
There's some reporting that they got in and moved much of their enriched uranium. Nobody knows, but the idea that if they did, what's it all for? I mean, it seems like a perfectly executed political hit. And it reminds me of Trump 1 when he killed Soleimani, the Iranian general. I hosted a special with all of my favorite experts. I thought we were going into World War III. We put some holes in the ground. He got his win. They launched a bunch of missiles. They said they launched an equal number of missiles. It's not a Middle East war. It's not regime change. That's it. We're good. We'll move on.
Well, I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because a huge part of MAGA, this is what I've been saying for last week, and this is where we are, is I wish we had an anti-war party. We don't. I said last week that I have more faith in the MAGA America First base keeping us from war than the Democratic establishment, because Donald Trump, he ran on, right? Peace, strength, security, non-interventionism, America First. We're not going to be the world's policeman. We're going to spend all that money on Americans. But wait, threatens Canada with essentially, you know, overtaking Canada, making a 51st state, which literally resuscitated the liberals and gave Carney the win, right? Has on the table that he's going to use military. He's open to using the military to take over Greenland, right? Has essentially pissed off the entire world, including our allies with this trade war, which has yielded zero trade deals, right? Has pissed off the EU and NATO by kissing up to Russia. The Ukraine-Russia war was supposed to end within a week. Nope. That's still going on. Oh, Gaza, that was supposed to end. Nope, still a genocide. And now Netanyahu dog-walked Trump, because just like he dog-walked him in the first administration, folks, because, look, facts matter. And Pete and I are old enough that we remember how the corporate media was, quote-unquote, embedded, right? Embedded with the U.S. troops and were stenographers for war propaganda. And the Bush administration lied. They lied to the American public to sell them the war in Iraq. Remember the mobile laboratories, nuclear weapons? None of it was there.
I remember all of it. Yeah.
None of them was there, right? All of it was bullshit. And so here we are where the U.S.-Iran deal under Obama was a diplomatic coup.
It's really...
Who blew it up, Pete? Who blew it up? Trump.
I mean, it's interesting what you say about having an anti-war party. I want to talk about that to a certain extent. But it is also interesting to compare the run-up to the Iraq war and the intelligence in arguments that you just mentioned that convinced enough of the American public and the world that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. We needed to go in. But remember the elaborate presentations, remember the slideshow, remember the testimony to the UN and to Congress, all of that. Yesterday on TV, the vice president and or the Secretary of State, I think it was Rubio, said, who cares about the intelligence? We've come a long way to the point where it doesn't matter if they were thinking of making a bomb, if they had uranium that was enriched enough to make a bomb, if they had a bomb. None of it matters because in the end, it only matters what Trump decides to do. I know why he decided to do. You gave a couple good arguments. The Fox News is playing well. Politically, it's a distraction. Netanyahu told him now's the time. Perfect. But the bottom line is it will do. They'll follow him anywhere. Yep. They will follow. There's no need to make a good argument. If Daddy says go, we're going to go.
And it's a very good point because at least even the Bush administration had to engage, like you said, into a campaign,
a long time to convince people.
Right? A theater of deception. Colin Powell, just shameful part of his legacy, right? With the vial of anthrax, right?
Yeah.
Yahoo came. And of course, Benjamin Yahoo for like 3 decades has been saying Iran is this close to having a nuclear weapon. And Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, told the world 90 days ago that Iran is not close to having a nuclear weapon. And he throws Tulsi under the bus twice publicly last week. And then based on vibes, and speaking about vibes, he said, 2 weeks, I'll decide in 2 weeks. And then he was mocked and ridiculed. And he's like, okay, I'm going to be strong, not weak. And then boom, he did it, right? No. So even then, they don't even have to engage in the pretense of selling the war because, like you said, they're both lazy. And they realize they have a mercurial, like feckless, kind of impatient idiot, Donald Trump. What he says goes. And he throws J.D. Vance under the bus. J.D. Vance goes on the shows early and said, this is not regime change. Pete Hegseth said, don't worry, this is not regime change. A few hours later, what does Trump post on Truth Social? Regime change.
Yeah.
MIGA. Make Iran great again.
Yeah. MIGA. Careful how you say that. MIGA. M-I-G-A. Make Iran great again. But there's not going to be any boots on the ground. That would be a threshold that Americans just won't accept. Right now, there's some on the right and plenty of others who are criticizing this. But still, go back to my point about Soleimani back in whatever it was, 2018. I mean, Iran is far weaker than they even were then. They really are going to have a hard time with any kind of retaliation. We're not going to send boots on the ground. And this is just puppetry. They get to talk about their plane that they flew around the world and that we have big weapons and big mean bombs. He waved his dick around and everything is going to calm down now. What do you think?
No, it's not going to come down. That's not how this works. And we also, by the way, those planes.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. The planes and the bombs, folks, that cost $7 billion. So in addition to wasting $40 million on his pathetic military parade, he also just wasted $7 billion on
$7 billion that operation cost? Well,
yeah, each bomb was what, half a billion, 500 million, 14 bombs. That should be $7 billion. It should be about $7 billion, I think. Check it out. And then also the $40 million on the military parade, also the money that is being spent on unleashing the military and National Guard and ICE to terrorize LA residents, right? So, and also the 22-year-old who's now the head of our countering violent extremism, Thomas Fugate.
Oh, yeah, that guy's good.
Also the fact that Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense and no one respects him, and the fact that everyone uses Signalgate, which is why our allies won't trust us with intelligence because, Jeffrey Goldberg might get it, and the fact that our allies are turning away from us because we have engaged in a stupid trade war with them and mocked them and ridiculed them, and the fact that, if you do want nuclear de-escalation, the best way to go about it is to go ahead and bomb the country that actually entered into negotiations. Because if I'm a Middle right now, what the thing I'm doing for the next 10 years, Pete? I'm trying to get a nuclear bomb.
Yeah. Yes. It's the biggest.
Because if you have a nuclear bomb, what happens?
You got to see
destruction. No one's going to F with you. You know who has a nuclear bomb? Israel.
Yeah.
You know who else who has it? North Korea. And what happens when you have a nuclear bomb? Donald Trump gives you love letters.
I think we're getting a little laggy on my end. The bunker busters, they're $500 million. You're right, $500 million a bomb. I'm on Amazon Prime. I just got one.
There you go.
I got
you don't need to feed your kids. Why don't you just get like a bomb? So we just wasted all of that weaponry, all of that money. It's just and the establishment. I wish we had an anti-war party, and you know what? Maybe we might get one because listen, people. I'll try to be fair. Senator Schumer was more hawkish than Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Steve
on Iran. Yeah.
On Iran just 2 weeks ago. And the fact that today Marjorie Taylor Greene went on Steve Bannon and was against this war and said, "Why are we fighting this war on behalf of freaking Israel?" It made me almost vomit because I'm like, I want off this timeline. I can't believe I'm agreeing with Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Steve Bannon.
Why aren't the Democrats the anti-war party in this case? There's no senators that I've seen be outside of Fetterman, or I haven't seen any House Democrats be supportive of this attack. I've seen most Democrats say this, starting with it's illegal.
Few have, but they haven't been as vocal. And the reason being is I think they're waiting to see how it played out. I'm sorry to say, get paychecks from AIPAC, and all of them have been very muted when it comes to criticizing Israel. If you don't believe me, look at the past year and a half, the crackdown on pro-Palestinian activists.
And that was the moment that we started having technical difficulties. There was a bit of an echo. I told him to hang up and call me back effectively, and he did. When he does, right here, his volume's a little low, but give it maybe 30 seconds, and for some reason, it adjusts. I don't know what happened. I apologize for interrupting. Back to the conversation. All right, you were on a roll. You're always on a roll. You're so good at talking. I was watching you talk alone earlier for like 30 minutes. I was like, this guy, how does he do that? I wouldn't have any. I
did this midnight rant. I'm like, no one's going to watch it. It's like the third most viewed thing I've done on my Substack.
Is it really?
Yeah, like it had 3,500 likes. I'm like, what happened? Why? How? None of this makes sense.
That doesn't make any sense just because the only thing to suggest is that people would rather see you alone than you with anybody, even though you talk to some of the smartest, most interesting people out there. So that's not a bad thing.
Well, that's a nice way to put it. I just think people were desperate for some content.
I talked alone for 20 minutes the other night, and people started literally going on live and killing themselves live, which I was like, is it that bad? They're like, yes, I can no longer.
That's I have to kill myself. I'm sorry.
Live on MySpace.
Pete's like, I'm just reciting some poetry. Nope.
It's Thomas Frost. What is wrong with you?
You're like, nope, I'd rather die than have you recite Frost.
I said Thomas. I meant Robert. I couldn't even do the bit. I couldn't even
you were going to correct yourself.
Okay. Anyway.
To quote Robert Frost, life, it goes on. And it must. But what I was saying was, real quick, we have to be honest. We have to connect the dots, Pete, because oftentimes people don't. And maybe that's what people appreciated. Listen, there was the war on terror. You and I are old enough. Yeah. And the war on terror, like we saw, Bush demonized Muslims and Arabs, axis of evil, us versus them, bullshit, lies. We went to Iraq, normalized Islamophobia. As a result of the war on terror, what got created? Patriot Act. What got created? DHS. What got created? Pete? ICE. The rest of us said, hey, you are willingly giving up your freedoms and liberties for the feeling of safety and security. And they said, shut the F up, you terrorists. Shut the F up, you're anti-American. When we said, this will be used against you in the future. They're like, we don't care. Who is terrorizing Americans right now? ICE. What did Donald Trump say to try to hit Barack Obama? He's a Muslim, right? The birther conspiracy. What did Donald Trump run on? The Muslim ban. What was the first thing he did in his first administration the first week? The Muslim ban, right? Then Netanyahu, the fact that the establishment is all in for Israel, no matter what, even with war criminal Netanyahu, the genocide, the crackdown on university, the crackdown on pro-Palestinian activists, right? It all leads up to this moment, and that was emboldened by Joe Biden. Joe Biden was able to change on so many things, Pete. When it came to friggin' Palestine, man, like just ossified in 1970s, just refused to change, right? And we know now, as we saw at that time, he greenlit everything that Netanyahu did. Netanyahu crossed every single red line, and Joe Biden said, fine. And so Netanyahu was like, I'm emboldened. Who's going to stop me?
No, you're absolutely right.
Deal.
When you say anti-war, I wish we had an anti-war party. I was only thinking in a vacuum about this bombing of Iran. I wasn't thinking of the Democrats and the Biden administration and obviously everything that's happened in Gaza. I mean, you're not wrong about that. We're seeing that play out obviously in the New York City mayoral race as well. And
and I was going to get there. That's happening tomorrow. Look what the racism against Mamdani. It's clear as day.
Well, one thing that has really just never changed is, God, we, the whites, hate you guys. We hate you so much that when we find out that it's you, we're like, oh, thank God. Or, of course. And we're just not worried about you guys dying very much. And we're just really we're not thinking about your families. Muslims specifically, especially Muslims. I mean, we could certainly talk about Hispanics, brown people in general. But when it comes to foreign wars, and I mean, I've heard a lot of people say this. So just say another thing about how long we have been bombing Muslim countries almost my whole life, and we're fine with it. We're pretty okay with it. I just want to point that out as a white.
Permanent war boner when it comes to bombing Muslims. And even the Rhino, Never Trump neocons, they showed their true colors.
It's this argument about, does Congress need to give approval to, bomb another country? And every single president, including Obama and up to Trump, refers to the AUMF, which was created after 9/11. And I think now it's like, no, they're still Muslims.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
The AUMF covers all Muslim.
All Muslim. Palestinian is a Muslim, is an Arab, is ISIS, is Al-Qaeda, is Hamas. Zoran Mamdani, who is the son of South Asian African immigrants, right, from Uganda. He's apparently in charge of the Intifada, and he's apparently Hamas. It doesn't matter, folks, the racism. And that's why I always try to stress with DAnielle. We co-host Mark's Age. We talk about the twin sins of America is always, always, always white supremacy and greed. And so who's going to benefit from this war? Netanyahu, a war criminal, violent extremists who are going to be emboldened. And by the way, those are violent extremists also at home, because the number one domestic terror threat is white supremacists and right-wing terrorism. Remember Vance Bolter? The one who just assassinated friggin' Minnesota elected officials that no one's talking about? Yeah, I digress. And the fact that a friggin' Nazi white supremacist just got an award from the University of Florida for writing a paper arguing how the Constitution only applies to white people.
I saw
that's from 2 days ago, folks. Can't make this shit up. In the University of Florida, you can't teach courses on racism, but you can straight up be a Nazi student writing a piece on how the United States, the laws and rights only apply to white people, and a Trump-appointed judge gave him an award for that essay.
And he now has more subscribers on Substack than you in one day.
Yeah, but white supremacy goes a long way. If he was to talk for 20 minutes, people would kill brown people, not themselves.
They're building a Death Star behind him. His name is Preston Damsky. He's a white nationalist and anti-Semite. That's the first two lines of the story. The white nationalist wrote a law school paper promoting racist views. It won him an award.
I'm telling you, I don't make this shit up, man. I come with my receipts.
No, I saw that last night, and I read that part of it, and I was like, and I just decided I wanted to move on. All right.
Can I ask you, as a New Yorker, right now, Mamdani and Cuomo are tied. The race is tomorrow. Yeah. What happens if Cuomo wins? Clinton went and supported Cuomo. Clyburn did. Lawrence Summers, New York Times, all the Wall Street bros, Palantir CEO. Like this is so disgusting. Pete. But you tell me as a New Yorker.
I don't know, and I'm not a New Yorker anymore. I mean, I was for 12 years, and but I'm not a voter there, and I'm shocked. You know, I'm really shocked at it. I just remember that it would absolutely disqualify you from running for office if, like, a couple of women, maybe one, but if two women had accused you of something pretty bad behavior, or much less an affair, if you just had an extramarital affair. But Andrew Cuomo has always been a terrible, terrible person, and people know that. It's hard to have an excuse that they don't know that, but it's a mayoral primary, and name recognition seems to be the only thing that matters. This guy, Mamdani, has run apparently the greatest campaign anybody's seen in years on social media and elsewhere. But it'd be really, really upsetting to see Democrats, to see Andrew Cuomo back in the fold running New York City with all of his horrific character qualities. And loyalty to corporations and brands and money over the people, no doubt about it.
And this is why I think it's the establishment. I think it's literally the people versus the establishment. And if he wins, I think either way it's going to be a watershed moment, because if he wins, it's a direct FU to so many people. I think there's going to be a lot of people who completely lose faith in the Democrats. You're going to see a disillusionment. But if he loses, they're going to go after Mamdani. Man, if they have like 10 cannons after AOC, it's going to be 100 cannons, precisely for what we've talked about the last 20 minutes.
Well, AOC's brand seems to be still pretty impressive. She accompanied Mahmoud Khalil through the airport the other day. I mean,
she did. I didn't see that. That's great.
She's courageous. What she's doing.
He was back at Columbia. That's dope.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an unbelievable story. That and Kilmar Abrego Garcia, both those are pretty big wins from the past week.
And also, Los Angeles Dodgers responding to community leadership and rejecting ICE, and also giving $1 million to immigrant rights. That's pretty big too. That they responded to bottom up leadership, not top down.
It's worth counting the wins. I think you should do, seeing as that these single person videos are so great. Maybe I'll just send you all the wins I see. You collect all the wins. You should do it this week's wins, because there are, and I really am serious. Like, we have
That's a good idea.
We have to recognize that there are a lot of good people doing good things all the time. And sometimes good things happen as a result of the activism and work that people are doing, putting themselves out there and advocating and making phone calls. And so, it's a good reminder that and an incentive. It's the only way we get back to anything and make the world a better place for our kids, if we recognize the fact that good people are doing good things. So I put that upon you.
You know what? If I'm free tonight, well, I should be on vacation tonight or tomorrow. You know what we should do? We should do something called this week's wins or this month's wins or something, and just make a list, and I'll invite you, and we'll just go down. And
let's do it. Yeah, let's do this month's wins. This week's wins with Pete and Waj.
That's a good one.
We'll come up with something snappier than that.
I think, like Mahmoud Khalil is a good one. Them going against ICE in LA is a good one.
There's all kinds of really important things that are happening that you see unfold on social media, even like an account blowing up for a good reason, or the fact that there's a shadow group of vaccine scientists creating their own board.
They are. I didn't know that. See,
there's all kind, and I'm just all over the news every single day. So I'll do it with you anytime you want. Even if we only have 5 good wins, we go on, we share them, and we remind people that there's a lot of good folks out there.
Let's do that this week. Let's wait until what happens tomorrow. I'm hoping we can add a Cuomo loss. As that, we should lead with that. But I think that's really good. I think it's a good idea, and let's try it out. Let's go on live Substack and do it.
Are you going to go to which Orlando? Can you say you don't want to tell the public which Orlando destination?
I think the kids want us to go to Magic Kingdom, so it's all going to be painful regardless.
No. Have you been to Magic Kingdom before with your kids?
To everything, man.
Oh, right, because your family lives there. Okay.
Everything. I've even been to Gatorland.
Wait, I feel like you want to keep talking to me. You don't want to go anywhere with these kids. You're like, who else wants to talk? I have to make 5 more 1-hour just me videos.
Bro, they also want to go to water park. I'm like, when will the water park end? God, one day.
Have you gotten recognized at any of those places? Aren't you that political commentator? What are you doing?
I see sometimes
people look at you.
Whites giving me, yeah. Like sometimes, like the Browns and the Blacks come up and say, "Hey, man, good job."
Always the case. Always the case. When I was on CNN every night for a year, I got recognized every day by Black people, and always in the airport by Black It was the white people. If the white people see you, they don't say anything. Black people will walk up and be like, "Hey, man, aren't you Warbalot?"
Yeah, like, "Hey, Warbalot." There was a black man at an airport who said, "Hey, Warbalot, on Piers Morgan, good job, bro, good job." I'm like, "Great." And the whites, they just look at you. And I'm like, "You're looking at me, and I have a feeling you think you know."
Well, whites look at you and go, "Is that liberal commentator or the shoe bomber?"
Is that Jose Padilla?
Shit. That was a weird moment that he was calling him Jose Padilla.
It was a deliberate moment. And now they're openly saying, "Cry harder, libs." It's racism, man. You know, I've been saying it on your show for talking for years, and people are like, quiet, darky. We're post-racism.
Hey,
and it all goes back to racism.
Give me some credit. I've been saying it on my show since 2008.
You're right.
Racism. It's always so much racism. And when you add the religion, Islam,
it's a double whammy. It's a cocktail.
Out of here.
That's like a horny goat weed on steroids.
Just don't marry my daughters. That's where I'm at right now.
Protect my daughters, but don't marry them or I'll kill you.
I just met my daughter's new boyfriend. He's even bigger than the last one. They keep getting bigger.
Is he a white?
He's a white. He's very white, but he seems to be well-read. I don't want to say much more. It just then is that he's huge. He's fucking huge. I met him. I looked up at him. I was like, "You taking my daughter out? Okay. She seems to really like you. Okay. See you later, sir."
Yeah. I saw that movie, which I really liked. 28 years later, there was an alpha zombie who's like 7'2". So your daughter just goes for the alphas.
Oh man. I don't know what she's doing, but they just, it's my only comment. They keep getting larger every time.
And then you keep getting balder and smaller and older.
Exactly. They're like, "Your father looks like an old sea captain. Is he okay?" I'm like,
"Darr." He's like, "Darr, oh.
Be careful out there."
He goes, "Does he have scurvy? What happened to him?"
Why does he talk like an old sea captain too?
And how come he keeps switching his eye? One eye is down, and the other, and he keeps switching the claw. It's like young Frankenstein.
"Don't get me started on some of my wildish rides, son."
"Darr, if you treat me daughter well, I have treasures for ye."
It's the only way you can seem tough as an old white is if you're like an old sea captain-y voice like that.
Yeah, because you would scare him. You'd be like, "This man might be crazy, and he has a hook, and he might kill me."
And Anky pulls out an anchor, just lands on his hood.
He's like, "Darr." He goes, "Don't make me stab thee with my rapier."
I laugh every time you do the guy. Every time you do "darr," it makes me laugh, and I don't want to because it's not that fun.
No, it's just so stupid. We should try it out. The first thing you say, "Darr, the name is Pete. Petey Dominic, darr."
It's just when you meet any boyfriend, you just make that noise, and it doesn't matter how big he is, he's fucking terrified.
You'd be like, "I want to get out. I'll treat your daughter well. I think we should break up." She's like, "Why? Your father, man."
Mr. Dominic, it's really nice to meet you. Darr.
Darr. Darr, pleasure to meet you too, matey. Darr.
Why does he wear an eye patch? I don't know.
He goes, "Darr.
This is end of
Long Island. I had a run-in with Somali pirates, darr."
That's made me laugh a lot harder than I was planning. All right, man. I love you. Enjoy whatever you're doing with your family. They're only little ones.
But hey, make a list if you can. I think let's try it this week. I'm
going to make a list. That's what I'm going to ping you. I'm going to be like, "I got 7 things. Let me run them past you." And you can, if you got any to add.
5 things. The week and wins, something like that. Like we need it. We need it.
Done.
All right, man.
All right.
Take
care.
Later.
Thank you. There he goes. There he goes. Darr. All right, Wajahat Ali. There you go, huh? How about that idea and the nonsense and ridiculousness that we ended with? Love it. All right, now go subscribe to his Substack, The Left Hook, and he has so many great conversations there and writes really interesting, important stuff. of course, buy his book and subscribe to him on YouTube and listen to the podcast. He's doing all kinds of things. Great work. One of the best out there and working his ass off to help everybody understand, talk to great experts as well. Now let's get to one of my favorite experts. I don't know why he's such an expert. I don't know what makes him so smart, and I hate blowing smoke up his ass, but we love talking to Bill Boyle about foreign relations, foreign policy, domestic politics, history, a wide range of subjects that he is very self-educated on. He lives down in D.C. He's got a lot of connections. We all think he is in the CIA, but he tells us he is not. I caught up with him last night at his home and on youtube.com/standupwithpete. Go subscribe, and here is how it sounded. There we are, live with Bill B in DC, Bill Boyle, and it is 6:26 Eastern, and about 6 o'clock, President Trump, our Mad King, posted on his third-rate social media platform, "Congratulations, everyone. It's been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire." And then he went on to say how it's going to work. He explained it. And then he says, "I'd like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what we should be called the 12-day war. The 12-day war, a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world." He didn't say, Bill Boyle, "I love you, God." Good to see you.
Yeah, I guess their personal relationship is over now. So can I jump right out of the box and say that what is so utterly asinine and ridiculous about that statement is that if the United States had not given Israel the green light to attack Iran last week, none of this would have been necessary at all, because realistically, nothing has actually changed for the better after Israel's attack on Iran. Now, Iran is a super crappy, terrible government. They foment terrorism. They're bad. The Iranian government is. But any government, bad or good, needs to be secure. And any government you're ever going to get from this point forward in Iranian history, its number one priority is going to be to make sure this never happens again. Now, no Iranian government in the foreseeable future is ever going to have the kind of air power that Israel or the United States does. But this Iranian government, what it does have is that the United States hit 3 major places in Iran that stores highly enriched uranium. Iran had already moved a lot of the highly enriched uranium away. Maybe. And near Natanz, for instance, they have another centrifuge factory that wasn't even touched. So Iran has tons of I shouldn't say tons. It has many hundreds of pounds of highly enriched uranium with which it can make nuclear weapons. And that process is a much harder thing to track than the centrifuges that make the highly enriched uranium. So where we are right now is that whatever happens, Iran knows it cannot depend on air power. It can't depend on air defenses. So the only thing that any Iranian government of any stripe going forward is going to need or want is a nuclear deterrent. It's going to be the only thing that's ever going to stop this from happening to them again. And that would be true if you got a liberal democracy in Iran next year. These morons changed the world by doing this in a way that's ultimately going to cut back against our own ability to control things. The other thing that obviously everyone can see now is the limitations of Israeli force. Israel can knock your air force down. It can beat the crap out of your country. But eventually, and probably in the near future, Israel's going to run out of ammunition to continue to do it. And then it's back to square one as far as security goes, or at least square two. Israel can't invade Iran. All Iran has to do is endure. And I will tell you, if there's some kind of deal that's happening right now, it's merely a pause. There is no regime change happening. The Iranian government has gotten hit hard, but it's not weaker. It's not weaker than it was last week or the week before in terms of running Iran. And so you're going to have a situation where overtly, or more likely very covertly, Iran is going to now really go for a weapons program, I should say. And they did not have one. Everyone agrees except for Israel that they did not actually have one before last week. we will look in the future and we will see this as the beginning of the Iranian nuclear weapons program. And, what the Iranians have seen is the limitations of what we can hit. They've seen the limitations of how much they can be damaged by American weapons. The reason that we didn't use the Moab and do this through 5 administrations was because everyone was afraid of this sort of result, where Iran now knows what the parameters are, what it can get away with, and what it needs to do to get to a situation where this can never happen to it again.
Why do they want to have a weapon so badly? Why not just stop pursuing a nuclear weapon? And
if they don't get a nuclear weapon, they will never be secure as a country ever again.
Why do they need security? Who is threatening them as a country? If they aren't threatening,
Pakistan's nuclear power on their border on the east. Israel's their nuclear power to the west, who hates them, and they hate Israel. The United States is a nuclear power that sits in the Strait of Hormuz right next to them. Russia's a nuclear power just north of them.
You don't think that there is a world in which Iran will stop overtly or covertly pursuing a nuclear weapon?
No, I think that Iran and many other countries, because America as a guarantor of peace has given up its role. And if there is no guarantor of peace, in other words, if to some degree the American security blanket and its nuclear umbrella don't protect you, then you have to do it on your own. I mean, Turkey is talking about upping its missile programs. You can bet Japan and South Korea are thinking about it. Indonesia is thinking about it. We have given up our role as at least a sort of sort of fair arbiter and defender of international law. And so everyone's going to cheer that this war is over. This is just the freaking beginning. This broke a bunch of norms and boundaries. And I don't like the Iranian government at all. I think they're awful. The Ayatollahs are terrible. But we just probably kept them in power longer. And we just did another shot at the global system that the U.S. set up after World War II that kept things mostly stable. This is going to destabilize things in the long run. Turkey, 100%, has got to be thinking about getting nukes now because they don't want to be in a situation where Israel attacks them and they can't have them back.
Why'd you say Israel will run out of ammunition?
This stuff is very munitions heavy to do this to a whole country like Iran. And while Israel knocked out their air power and they hit them on their military stuff and whatever, they weren't close to like shutting down Iran as a functioning society, not even remotely close. To have that kind of air power, I mean, I don't think it really exists, frankly. But to even take a reasonable shot at it takes thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of munitions and tens of thousands of sorties and more pilots and airframes than they have.
They haven't seemed to run out of ammunition to destroy all of Gaza or much of it. I don't know.
It's different. They're just lobbing artillery shells in. That's easier. Mm. These are, precision munitions being fired at military targets.
Going back to last week, this 12-day war, when Benjamin Netanyahu elected to attack Iran, that was a very complex operation with all kinds of planes and missiles and bombs and boots on the ground, actually agents on the ground with drones, apparently. It was elaborate. It seemed to have killed their air defenses, which allowed them to then attack more, including all those nuclear sites. It seems like, is there reporting on this? It certainly seems everybody is saying that Netanyahu, a bad man, convinced another bad man to attack a third bad man regimes. But Netanyahu basically put America in a box and said, we just softened it up. You can now send your bombers, any of your planes, your F-35s and your B-2s in, and they're not even going to get shot at. You're going to look amazing. Is that kind of
that's Bibi talking smack, frankly.
No, I don't know what happened. I'm just saying that's what it seems like. It kind of the conversation, and you heard Marco Rubio is like, screw the intelligence. It's like basically it seems like it was a conversation between the Israelis and the Americans, a few people even.
It was Bibi and Trump. And Bibi was saying, and all the Trump people did initially was to say, okay, we will basically tell the Iranians nothing's going to happen until the talks are over. And then that lulled the Iranians into not hitting their bunkers, which is what allowed the Israelis to kill a bunch of their leadership in the beginning. It was only after it looked good in the first few days that the Trump people started to go, ooh, this looks powerful. And this is Trump himself, frankly. This looks powerful and this looks amazing. So let's get in on it. So none of this is being driven by strategy. This is all just domestic politics in Israel, domestic politics in the United States, a certain amount of legitimate concern about Iran. But I mean, they're quite literally saying, forget the intelligence. I mean, that's a sentence from the Secretary of State. And Trump said about, Tulsi Gabbard of all people said, hey, there's no evidence that they have a weapons program. Even she said that. And Trump was like, I don't listen to her. Like, this is so clearly driven by the wrong motivations, by totally self-aggrandizing narcissism in our leadership. There's no strategy to this. It's just an appalling, stupid thing.
When you say there's no evidence that they had a weapons program, there's plenty of evidence that they had uranium that was enriched at percentages far too high for the use of energy and could be used for a weapon.
Could be used for a weapon, correct.
Those are two. Program, when you say weapons program now, do they have a missile to put it on, a rocket to put it on, a payload? No, apparently they didn't have that, but they did have uranium that was clearly being enriched for weapons grade.
Well, I would disagree with that, actually.
Oh.
They had very little highly enriched uranium until we tore the JCPOA up, until Trump himself tore up Obama's agreement in 2018. Then they enriched kind of slowly for 3 or 4 years. And then when they realized that the U.S. wasn't listening, then they started enriching a lot more quickly. But they still did it where the IAEA, for the most part, knew where all of it was. Like, they weren't trying to hide it. And what I think that most people who study this stuff would say was it's a negotiating tactic. It's let's start enriching, because if they're not listening to us and our security is not, we're not seeing any sort of deal on our security that's going to get the attention of the Americans, then let's give ourselves options. One of those options is get more enriched uranium so that maybe if you really, really have to do it down the road, you have enough for a weapons program. But at minimum, it gets the attention of the U.S. and gives us a bargaining chip with which to negotiate. There's no evidence by anybody. The Israelis claim they have evidence, and they never ever deliver it. There's no evidence that, it's not just putting it on, you don't just take like 10 pounds of highly enriched uranium, smack it on a missile and fire it. A nuclear weapon is a fairly well understood, but it's not a simple thing to make a trigger for an actual nuclear weapon. And you have to then make that trigger, put the uranium in it, and then have it be robust enough that it can be fired off in a missile and not just fall apart on the way or misfire when it gets to where it's going. These things are really precision things, but you don't need a big production line to do them, right? So here's my point, though. The Iranians, it seems pretty clear, were avoiding doing that. And remember, all of the Ayatollahs who have run the country have said, fatwa against building a nuclear weapon, fatwa against using them, multiple times, many times. They've never used one. They've never used a dirty bomb. They could do a dirty bomb tomorrow if they wanted to. Never done it, right? So it's an extremist regime, but it's not an irrational one. The Iranians don't want to destroy Israel and then lose Iran. There's no sign of them ever being up for that. And so I just think we treat Iran as if it's like this satanic regime that is uniquely bad in the world. And I think that is basically they're really bad. They're no worse than North Korea. They're no worse than the Soviet Union was. They're no worse than Cuba. And we've dealt with and built trust and verified things with all of those countries to make sure things don't get out of hand. Iran is the exception to that, and it's obviously because of how people feel about Israel, about how Jews feel about the Holocaust, about how the Iranians say totally inflammatory things. But in the end, we're not. If you want to build a better world, you do it by working to build trust, even with people you hate, so that you don't end up in situations like this. Right now, when I've asked a bunch of people who are sort of experts in this field, 3 or 4 to be fair, what would it take for Israel to feel absolutely sure and totally fine and believe there is no nuclear program going on in Iran that might attack them someday? And the answer from everybody who knows Israel is there's no level of knowledge that's going to make them feel secure. On top of which, what would Iran need to feel secure against Israel? There's no level now. There's nothing except maybe a nuclear program. And then if they have a nuclear program, they know they can't be invaded. Then everyone's got to think 10 times before bombing them, et cetera. So this is a gigantic failure in every way. And it's people that are like, Trump and Netanyahu who are getting their kicks on how people are responding on Truth Social.
Well,
and there's no strategy. There's no long-term thinking in this. And the outcomes are going to all be real bad in the end.
All right. Well, a lot of it, I think, would be as a result of domestic politics, how this plays at home, which is what I was also going to ask you. A lot of this seems to be about that. Netanyahu striking. I mean, let me just go back to, before I get to domestic politics, Iran is a major sponsor of terrorism. Yes?
Yes. Although less than people realize. I mean, all those cells in the U.S. that were supposed to be attacking us right now seem to be basically non-existent.
In terms of in the Middle East, in terms of their proxies, the Houthis, and obviously Hezbollah for a long time, in Lebanon forever, not forever, but back to the 80s, right?
Decades, yeah.
They attacked the Marines in 1981, killing like 280 Marines in Beirut. Of course, they've not been a great actor on the stage in the Middle East in terms of what they've sponsored. They continue to threaten Israel, both rhetorically, obviously, and with all those proxies I just mentioned, right? All fair to say?
All fair to say, except it's interesting that we should point out that their proxies are getting their asses kicked or have disappeared.
Well, I wanted to get to that as a result of Israel. I mean, Israel has executed a very effective strategy against all of these proxies, especially obviously, all of them, with Hezbollah now in Syria and the pressures they put to bear there, whatever control they had there, obviously. And they've done tremendous damage, and they've weakened all of these threats that have been posed against Israel for most Israelis' lifetimes. They've been at battle with them, at war with them. They weakened them. They weakened then Iran, and then they then went even further and attacked Iran with, I think, when we look back on it, a military attack that will be seen as kind of decapitating their ability to fight back Iran's. And go ahead.
Well, and so that's the point, though, right? Israel's successes, by the way, have not been necessarily clean or the result of Israeli, not all of them, have been the result of Israeli foresight and planning. Gaza, you could say, yes, they've crushed Hamas, but that's because they left themselves open to one of the worst attacks ever in Gaza on the Israeli state. So, I think I have great respect for the Israeli government's ability to conduct operations. Tactically, they're geniuses, but they strategically were morons with Gaza and Hamas. They helped create Hamas's rule there and paid for it terribly in the end, right? In two ways that are going to damage the Israeli state forever, by the way. As far as Lebanon went, that operation was great. They did an amazing job there. But what have they really – and so that gets us to a point. Like, the U.S. was in nuclear talks under the Trump administration 3 weeks ago with Iran, and they were making progress. So did Israel attack because they needed to force Iran to the negotiating table? No.
What do you think?
Well, Iran was already weakened. Iran had already gotten hurt.
No, they were already at the – yeah, go ahead.
So the point being that it's not that Israel was conducting this operation because they were like, hey, we're under greater threat than we were last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They were much less threat than they were then. They did it because they felt like, oh, my enemy is weak and I can come in and kick him in the nuts one last time. That's why they did it. There's no strategic bigger picture going on there other than that. And, of course, what that did by us letting the Israelis take advantage of the talks process to kill a bunch of Iranian leadership is that now the Iranians have no reason to ever trust us ever again. They're now always going to look at us as a totally dishonest interlocutor who will not stick. We ripped up the JCPOA. We tricked them on this attack on Israel. Then we jumped in kind of like, we're like the 6-foot kid in 7th grade whose 4-foot tall buddy beats somebody up. And then he's like, oh, this is awesome. And he jumps in and throws a couple punches himself because his shorter buddy has knocked somebody down. Right? It's just an utterly pathetic mentality. And so like below the level that the U.S. should be operating on.
Well,
the big point being that, like, again, yes, you could say Israel's surrounded by all these enemies and it's done all these things to stop them. Well, what did this accomplish? Like, what actually was accomplished by attacking Iran this time? Other than totally making sure the Iranians never trust the U.S. again. They knocked out a bunch of terrible Russian anti-air defenses that everybody knew was shit anyway.
I think the Israelis and the Americans would say what it accomplished was it prevented Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Let's go to that, because that's a really good point. So Iran has centrifuges to make all this highly enriched uranium. Well, they hit Fordow, they hit Isfahan. They didn't even touch the even bigger, gigantic centrifuge factory near Natanz. We're not even sure how much they damaged in Fordow and Isfahan. So we don't even know if we've even significantly hurt Iran's ability to create highly enriched uranium. We don't know that. And the U.S. is being a little like, well, we're assessing. The Pentagon's saying we're assessing it. If they knew they crushed it, they would say it. That's number one. Number two, they were moving highly enriched uranium out of these facilities for the week before it happened, when the Iranians knew what was going on.
There is some reporting on that, but how sure can we be that they would?
I know for a fact the IAEA knew. Knew before this began that there were 902 pounds of highly enriched uranium missing already, like 4 weeks ago, that had vanished. I got to tell you, you can move highly enriched uranium in what basically, look, those soda kegs, those metal soda kegs that you see in a restaurant. Yeah. You can move uranium in those, and they weigh 50 pounds, and you can move them around the country however you want to, in trucks, cars, whatever. It's a guarantee that we don't know where all of Iran's highly enriched uranium is. It's guaranteed. It's 100%, because the facilities got bombed. What better way to hide moving stuff than, hey, everything got bombed. You must have blown it up. I don't know. So, and this is what I get at, where Israel can never now be sure. Can never be sure. And there could be 30 Iranian scientists working, in some lab that's supposed to be mechanical engineering lab, and they could be making a nuclear weapon. They like delivery systems. Iran has missiles. They have artillery. They have a really, what people don't realize is that the Shah of Iran himself in the 1950s is the one who started this program by sending a bunch of engineers to MIT. This is not a new thing. Iran having nukes predates the Ayatollahs by a significant amount. In fact, the Shah was far more into having them than the Ayatollahs are. So, like, this is not. There's an infrastructure. There's a mindset. And now, of course, there's an obvious, gigantic grievance amongst people who would not normally have loved the regime, but they're, you're an Iranian. If the Iranians assassinated, the vice president, would you and I be saying, hey, great? No, we'd be like, motherfuckers. We hate the guy, but he's our vice president. And I think that, what we're in a situation where we're overstating, the White House and the Israelis are overstating the damage done. When you read carefully, you realize it's not clear we damaged it all that much. They are completely ignoring the fact that there's a bunch of highly enriched uranium now that will never be tracked. And they're ignoring the fact that it's much easier to hide like an actual weapons program, particularly when you're going to have a lot of Iranians who say Iranians who might have cooperated with the Israelis before are not going to anymore because their country got attacked so obviously.
Most American voters, we could talk about Israel, but let's talk about America. Most American voters are only going to buy a pretty simple narrative that's very believable, that our president gave a brave order to send brave members of our military to bomb Iran.
Yep.
And this risky mission and risky decision, something almost equivalent to Obama going after bin Laden. Right. And they're going to say President Trump ended Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon. And then he brought all the region together in his Truth Social post, and he should be given the Nobel Prize. He's going to, I fear, get a lot of credit for this operation that might have just been sending missiles into the side of a mountain that did very little and was low risk because they had nothing to shoot back. And, just dropping bombs.
He might get some support for this in the short term. I don't think it's that super important in the long run at all, or even the medium term, because I think it's going to become pretty clear pretty quickly. And I will point out, by the way, only 5% or 15% of Americans, something like that, wanted a war with Iran. 85% did not.
But no one's going to call it a war with Iran. This isn't a war.
But
it was a bombing strike. Is all it was.
Okay, but think about what the Iranians read in that. Right? This is why you don't do these things unless you really want to go for it.
No, but I'm just talking about why does it matter what the Iranians think? I'm talking about domestic politics. I'm talking about
the Iranians know it's very unlikely to happen again with the U.S. involved. It's very unlikely. We shot our bolt. Trump did it. It's clear that regular Americans really are not up for it, and the Iranians are going to be aware of that. And I will tell you, it wouldn't shock me a bit if the Iranians for the next year or two make a lot of conciliatory noises. But that doesn't have anything to do with like the strategic facts on the ground and what they're going to want to do with the facts at hand. And what
are they going to want to do? What are you saying? Their motivation?
They have to build for themselves a reasonable amount of regime and national security. They have to. And that's going to drive everything.
You're not talking about counterattacks or funding proxies or sleeper cells or turning off my air conditioner. You're talking about they're going to do whatever they can to adapt to get a nuclear weapon. And what are the chances, by the way, that they could just buy one? Why don't they just buy one on Amazon? Like the Russians apparently are saying, you know what, we'll give them one. Like
Medvedev said that, who is just a drunk and an outsider, and I wouldn't take him very seriously. But I know, right? I mean, well, it takes one to know one. I would say that no one's going to give you a nuke because nuclear material has a signature. And so if I give you a nuke and it's full of uranium from Omsk or somewhere, people are going to know where it came from. If it's Pakistani, they're going to know where it came from.
I didn't know they could do that.
It's got like a fingerprint. Yeah. I mean, when Chernobyl blew up, they knew where it was from pretty quickly by the particular whatever isotopes or whatever. So no one's going to give that to you. There are rumors that basically Pakistan would give one to the Saudis if they wanted it because the Saudis like maybe paid for the Pakistani program. But I think I'm not sure if that's true anymore. I've heard it. And I believe it when I see it, basically.
So that's you're talking about how one country could acquire a bomb from another country. So it doesn't work.
If you're in the nuclear club, every other nation added to the club weakens your position.
What does this mean for the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was signed a very long time ago and which has been in place for our whole life? Israel's not signed it, but Iran has, and I believe, and much of the rest of almost every other country in the world has. And I mean, what do I need to understand about that treaty and how important it was, what it actually did, and what it would mean if it were ignored or torn up?
The Non-Proliferation Treaty worked when the United States was the guarantor. In other words, if Indonesia decided to build nukes so it could nuke Australia, the United States was there to stand in and say, oh, no. We're going to mess with you. We're going to hurt your ability to build it. We're going to work with you to get rid of it. And if you ever use it on anybody, God help you because we'll be there to respond. South Africa had a very extensive nuclear weapons program, which they literally just gave up. They just handed it in. And it was because the United States put its entire effort and diplomatic ability behind making sure that they couldn't find a use for it and that it was problematic for them in too many ways. The Trump administration doesn't care. I mean, they're going to say, oh, we don't want nukes. No one should get nukes. But, if you're Japan being told that they have to now spend 5% of their GDP on defense, which is a ludicrous percentage, if you're Japan, why not just get nukes and cut it to 2% and tell the United States to go fuck themselves?
Right.
Like, I mean, South Korea, places that are under serious threat, that have high technological ability and have a neighbor like China, for example. If you're Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, I mean, getting nukes is an obvious thing to do if the United States is no longer dependable. European countries, Poland, obvious thing to do. Turkey, obvious thing to do. Whether they'll do it or not, we'll see. But I think this has been one of the biggest and worst moments in nonproliferation in modern history, because this is just, showing that Israel has impunity because it's got nukes in a lot of ways, and Iran, because it doesn't, can get stomped on at the will of some clown in the White House who just wanted to drop some big bombs and get a polling bump out of it.
You really think that's what this was in the end? I mean, I don't think it was. I think that he believes whatever Netanyahu tells him, and Netanyahu tells him how great of a threat Iran is. I'm sure Netanyahu or whoever talks to him, whoever wants to convince Trump of anything, we all know that they sketch it out for what it's going to look like for him politically. And they say something like, you're going to look amazing once you do this. You win every which way. Like, Netanyahu must talk to him that way.
So Bibi tried this in the first term, tried to get Trump to do all kinds of things. Trump didn't do it. This term, I think Trump, doesn't have the professionals around him like he did.
Right.
But B, I think that this Trump is also knows he's on his last term.
Iranian general Soleimani, he did that.
True. But there's also, but that actually.
We thought that was crazy at the time. We thought that was going to start.
I didn't think it was that crazy. I didn't like it, but I thought it was destabilizing. But Soleimani was a guy who did assassinations of political figures. Like, he gave those orders. I got that one. I didn't love it, but I got it. Soleimani was a player, and he paid the price for that. This is fundamentally very different. And, look at it. And there's reporting, by the way, that Trump wasn't going to get involved, and then got all wee-weed up when it looked like it was a spectacular event happening. When the Israelis were hitting and knocking things to shit, Trump was kind of like, yeah, excellent. Like, let's get in on this. I don't underestimate what a boy he is, what a child he is, because there's no strategic logic to this in the long run at all. And you're going to hear a lot of people in the media kind of making up reasons why it makes sense. I hate to say it, but like 10 years from now, you and I are going to talk about this and go, man, that was bad. And it led to a lot of other things. But too late now. We have I called it social media World War I. That's what we're in.
What do you mean by that?
This is driven by the clicks and by the perception of rah-rah that he's getting from social media.
What is the perception that you think is out there anywhere?
You
measure it.
I mean, I get people that aren't talking to me right now because I have said this to them in private, because on social media, they're hearing like, no, this is amazing. We destroyed their ability to make nukes, right? Like, the actual realities of what was done, both offensively and in its effect, don't exist for most people. They're here, particularly for MAGA people. They're just hearing, we hit this country, they're bad.
Yeah, right.
This is great. And so it's a social media war. It's for Trump to go, look what I did. It's idiocracy at its worst. And that's why it's a social media war. This isn't about what really changed or what was really affected. Trump literally did it. They dropped the bombs, and then they literally immediately went to the Iranians and said, okay, let's just stop there. Like, we just did that, but backsies, like, let's whatever. That's utterly insane. Why?
What else would they do? I mean, why is that not a good strategy?
It's a stupid strategy because you just attacked them. And what you would do if you've really hurt them and you've really gotten a position where you can extract something from them, you say, okay, that was round one. We can keep going unless you do A, B, C, and D, right? You have a position of advantage. You hold on to it. Trump is signaling immediately like, whoa, I'm backfilling. It's a little bit too much like real war. And the Iranians are going to know this. Like, everyone's like treating this like the Iranians are stupid. They're not. They're incredibly smart. And again, they're extremists that run that country, but they're smart extremists. And they're going to see this for what it is. They're going to fight their corner well, and they're going to end up they'll do a fig leaf. I guarantee you they'll do some sort of fig leaf. And the Israelis will have to go along because the Israelis can't just invade Iran. And in the end, I think Iran ends up with a bomb anyway.
Well, that would be the worst case scenario, I guess, and maybe a likely one. what are you seeing in American media or not seeing that you'd like to see? Who do you like? Who do you trust? I saw James Fallows, who I love, say if you watch the BBC right now, you'll see the difference in the kind of and style of reporting. I don't know what he meant by that. I have a good idea, but what are you, in terms of the reporting around this, what are you seeing that's getting, that's good, that's bad, anywhere?
What Fallows meant was that BBC reporting was factual. If you watch CNN, like CNN had one headline, which was like, America is pulled back into war in the Middle East. Like, no. We decided to jump in. Like the sort of Iraq war style nonsense, rah-rah in the media.
Yeah.
With even less fucking evidence was like back in full force this week, just amazingly. I'll give you a great example. What I'm telling you about highly enriched uranium just was reported in the New York Times this afternoon. So we've been at this for a week, and everyone's known who bothers to read about it that at least 902 pounds of it were gone before the bombing started. And so realistically, if there's missing highly enriched uranium, and you can't bomb it, then you're not stopping a nuclear program. That should have been number one in every media story before the bombs were dropped, because that's just the truth of it. And that didn't even come up. The New York Times kind of did this like, ooh, we just talked to a specialist, and here's the thing to think about. It should have been the first thing. Are we talking, the bombing is to stop their program? Well, we didn't bomb anything that's going to stop their program.
What else are you seeing like that, they pulled back in the war, anything else that you're seeing? By the way, I saw all the old guard come back in full force. It's David Frum, it's Bill Kristol, it's John Bolton on CNN today. I saw John Bolton.
And I got to tell you, I have much greater respect for Frum and Kristol than I used to, because they're right about democracy in America for sure.
They're part of the pro-democracy movement, no doubt about it.
And I'll take a wide range of allies in that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you read these guys talking about this.
But they should not be asked for their opinion. They should not be talking about the Middle East. They should be sitting back and watching other people talk about it. They should not be invited. John Bolton should not be invited to talk about Iran. The man.
I got a better one. Petraeus was asked for his opinion. David Petraeus, who gave secret documents to his mistress, who totally screwed up the war in Afghanistan, lost it, along with a bunch of other generals.
Nobody could have won it, to be fair.
No, but he helped. Like, he didn't just lose it, but he claimed he was winning it.
Well,
right?
They all did. Every single general claimed they were winning.
But this is my point. Like, in American history in the past, if you were a general and you didn't win, it was bye-bye, see you later, and you never heard from the guy again. Well, we seem in modern American history now to be like lionizing people who couldn't win. Like, I'm sorry if the war was hard.
None of these people should be. No, none of the American military. Yeah, it's.
I'm sorry the war was hard, but I still don't think that means I should have to listen to your opinion if you didn't do something extraordinary to win it. Like the guy who fought in crazy gun battles in the streets of Fallujah, extraordinary and amazing. But a general who sat in an office and made up coin doctrine that was completely bullshit, and then claimed to be a strategic genius. I don't want to hear from that guy. And
absolutely, fully agree. The point is, all of these people are the ones that are invited on to talk, where all of the voices who. By the way, plenty of military experts that are anti-war. A guy whose name I never forgot, and I should reach out to him, is named Daniel Bolger. He wrote a book called Why We Lost, a general inside account of why we lost the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I thought that man was, not to mention our old friend Congressman Walter B. Jones, people who realized that they were wrong and admitted it. Like, these guys still think that they were right about Iraq, or that if they had fought it differently, it could have won, or Afghanistan. And now they're being invited on to talk on TV. It's a disgrace.
Well, and I'll tell you something. I know generals that fought in the surge in Afghanistan. And what they will tell you is that anybody who was any general officer, any significant officer who went into the surge, if you asked them while they were there, do you honestly think this is going to do any good? As somebody put it to me, anyone who's not one general put it to me, anyone who's not a fucking idiot knew that it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So really, Petraeus is not so much a general as a really good self-marketer.
I was at an event was hosting the gala for the Iraq and Afghanistan Fund of America. It was 2 days after the election this past November, and I was in bad shape. I also had a infamous evening on CNN that night with Scott Jennings too. But that night,
more of you.
That night at the Iraq and Afghan veterans event, Petraeus is there because he's on the board, and he went up and he gave his speech, and he's behind the podium, and then there's a picture of him up to the right, and it's an old picture, Bill, and he looks younger. And so when I got back up to the mic, I just went off. I go, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. How old was that picture? And what do you do for your skin? And am I going to see my family again? Like giving him a little, I was like, are you going to rendition me out of here now for those jokes? And, or do I, cause I was really hoping to network with you and get your business card. And he walks up to the stage and hands me his business card. So he did not rendition me in the end.
Yeah. He just gave top secret documents to his biographer / mistress. What a guy. Yeah. I'd have trouble being nice to him, frankly.
Oh yeah. No, me too. I mean, that's why I took that shot and to his face. I mean, I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to speak truth to power that night at that very important event. No. But I was going to give him a little ribbing about his care regime. All right. I'll let you go. Are you going to join us at our hangout tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to try to. I'm busy running crazy all day. Been in like 3 different cities, and now I'm eating my wife's lovely noodles, and I will try to pop in.
I want some of your wife's lovely noodles.
She's a great cook. She's an amazing cook. Yeah.
We're talking about her cooking still?
I'd talk about cooking all day.
So we're talking about her cooking. Your wife's, it was innuendo. I'll let you go.
Oh, you dirty bastard.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And praise be. May the Lord open. Thanks for doing this with me. Appreciate you very much. And that is it, everybody. There you go. Bill Boyle. Go follow him on Blue Sky, and he joined us at the Hangout, and it was fun. You can hear more from him there. If you are a paid subscriber, you should get the link to last night's Hangout, and you can watch it or listen to it. That's all I've got for you. Thank you very much again to Wajahat Ali and to Will Powers, who suggested I include that Diego Luna clip, and everybody else who sends me stuff all the time. Thank you very much for upgrading your subscription or for getting a paid subscription. Almost 2 hours of information and excellent expert insight on today's show, and I can't do any of it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. John Carroll is an Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter and founding member of the Starland Vocal Band. He's got a new album out, johncarroll.org. Go download it. Take care of your mental health. Stay inside. Don't burn up today if you're in part of the heat wave, and I will talk to you tomorrow or later today. I should be joined by David Rothkopf around 4 p.m. East on YouTube. That's the schedule as of now. It can always change, add people, but that's the last thing I'll tell you. All right, be well. Take care of yourself. Love you. Bye.